passport to the world now. And look, you scan it with the phone and we could tell you got the chip in there. It's small enough to put in your body because, the guy's got the accent. So I'm just translating for you what's going to transpire here in this video. And it's all for your health. Has nothing to do, like, they don't track like cattle like this. It's not about livestock or chattel or anything like that, property of human beings for the rest of your life. I mean, sure, the rancher controls the immune system of every animal on his ranch. Sure. Because he's the rancher and he's going to eat that stuff as food. So he wants to tightly control the food source. I don't know why they'd want to inventory, track, trace, database all of us. They got someone stopping by. They have an order they're prepping for some people to stop by and pick what's going on. And these people who are like, your grandma has 3 shots and you only got 2. Don't go see them. I'm like, is that all you got, dude? Because we don't buy it anymore. We don't buy it. And we understand this thing doesn't work, that you lied to us all and you guys are doing nothing to rebuild that trust. So power goes like that. And it's going to travel someplace else. So yeah, let's go ahead and let's break into Jimmy Dore talking about the microchip.
Now, did we want to start this from the beginning or from 4 minutes in? That's because it opened up at 4 minutes in.
Just to start from the beginning. I think that was an accident on my part.
All right.
Proves that Tony's not an android.
All right, so let's talk about this. This was once considered a conspiracy theory. It says, beep, 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 your vaccination record has been verified. What? Watch this video. Watch this, ladies and gentlemen. Imagine showing your COVID-19 passport with just a flash of your arm. The Swedish company says it has a chip that can hold information about your vaccination status. It's so small you can embed it in your arm. This chip uses pre-existing technology that the firm is already developing. Gets creepier. Going to get really creepy in a second. Watch this. Stockholm-based Epicenter has been working on human-compatible tech for years.
Implants are a very versatile technology that can be used for many different things. And right now, it's very convenient to have a COVID passport always accessible on your implant.
The chip uses field communication, NFC. It can send data to any NEC-compatible device, such as a smartphone. The technology is not new, but use in humans has grown popular in the last decade.
Woohoo!
The first person to have microchip implanted was Kevin Warwick in 1998. Epicenter claims the procedure is completely reversible.
Huh.
The chips are not yet for sale. But the firm made headlines this year when the staff had passkeys implanted in their hands. It's also known for throwing parties when an employee gets chipped. So it's here. It's happening. I just want to show the quick react. Is this still a conspiracy theory when the mainstream media are telling you this? And how about this? Everyone, including me to an extent, who shit on conspiracy theorists have to eat their words. And then here's a guy. I have a long last concluded that Alex Jones is more reliable than 97% of the news media outlets. That's very funny. Let's bring in Max. Max, what's your reaction to this?
I love how they have a chief disruption officer. Like that's a title. It's like a cartoon of a tech bro, crypto guy. He's got like some mysterious logo on his chest. He's the chief disruption officer. That's the kind of image you need. You know, you don't want someone who looks like a sinister techno Nazi. You want someone who looks like a friendly tech bro who's disrupting everything to make life more efficient, to push this kind of product. And they're sort of normalizing it at this point because of the restrictions that have been placed on travel that are unprecedented for people. And it's pretty clear that there is an effort to make travel more difficult. But for people who over the past 2 years have been trying to travel, they've faced $5,000 like massive fees in order to quarantine coming back, or Europeans trying to get to the US would have to spend 14 days in a non-red list country. So many Europeans would have to spend 14 days in Mexico because apparently there was no COVID in Mexico in order to go to the US. And then you have the lockdowns, you know, just getting out into the street becomes restricted. People are have been brutalized for going outside. And so that's what they call Plan B in the UK. And so when you have that kind of situation, people just want efficiency. They'll do anything to have a more efficient situation. And therefore, the microchip is being normalized as people are being conditioned to accept vaccine passports, which will ultimately be digitized.
Yeah, well, they are already digitized. Mine is. They have, the government here in California has a website. You just have to go in there and you enter your name, and we got your digital passcode. Here it is. And so I'm already in the digital system. Yeah, this is real. People, by the way, it's not creeping. It's coming all at once, like a tsunami. Well, it all was started, Max. Don't you think all this got started after 9/11 when we decided to let the government and just turn us into a surveillance state where they now have a record of every email, every text, and every phone call that you send or receive? Don't you think that's what it's all under the guise of fighting terrorism, and now it's under the guise of fighting a virus, which has a 0.89% hospitalization rate?
Yeah, and we were made to believe that, you know, those measures and restrictions would go away.
Yeah.
But, you know, the emergency, the 9/11 version of the EUA that authorized the vaccine that became the basis for the vaccine passport, which will be digitized and then be expanded to other mandates and just become a general system of digital ID. The post 9/11 version of that was the AUMF. That was just like emergency. We're in an emergency situation. The president doesn't have to go through Congress to wage war. That has never been sunsetted, and everything flows from there. So that's what people need to understand about these restrictions, the concept of the vaccine or health passport, which has defined an entirely healthy swath of the population as a public health threat and a danger, and is transforming them into surplus humanity because they refuse to inject a novel pharmaceutical product into their veins. That will not go away. It will only be expanded. And now we see an effort to actually place the passport inside the bodies of people. It's another case where the conspiracy theorists were right. Again, I said it before on your show that when we first started talking just about the concept of the vaccine passport back in March 2020, I think I mentioned it on a live stream on the Gray Zone before you were like forbidden from talking about that kind of stuff on YouTube. I was called a conspiracy theorist. It was considered nutty by a lot of people. Then when the vaccine passports came in, especially the digital ones, I openly opposed them. And they call me a conspiracist for opposing them. It seems like every conspiracy theory or everything that's been called a conspiracy theory has come true in a rapid fashion against the backdrop of a pandemic that, like 9/11, was just another crisis or emergency that our national security state and global elites have exploited to advance their agenda. And a lot of the people who are the left have been the left critics of the war on terror. On this one, they're either sitting it out or they're cheering it on.
It's exactly right. I keep looking to the people I would normally look to for leadership in this time, and they're silent. And then the other people I would look to be comrades are actually cheering on this authoritarianism. It's chilling to see people who consider themselves skeptics of the government. They host shows where all they do is debunk the government's lies, but they have not a single criticism of the COVID policy, the vaccine mandates, nothing. It's jaw-dropping, and it lets you know that, again, it wasn't that hard for Hitler. It wasn't.
I actually saw some left media critic, I can't remember which one because they all blend into one kind of joyless, grim figure, say, the left critique of the pandemic or COVID is not that the vaccine has a microchip in it. It's that, we oppose we want vaccine equity, something like that. But like here you have the microchip right in front of your face. I mean, the vaccine isn't injecting it into you, but it's part of the overall program, the digital architecture of the tech that the technocracy wants to install. And there's no critique there. They're saying the left has no critique of this.
Well, go ahead.
What I've noticed also in the past week is a lot of kind of left commentators on Twitter just melting down, like really like going into a state of complete meltdown because the consensus is breaking. Thanks to you and others like you and people who came before you. I think a lot of people have been talking about this longer than we have, and we can acknowledge them. One person is CJ Hopkins, who I've had on my show at Rockfin, foreign agents 2 times, and who lives in Germany and is really on the front lines of some of the most draconian lockdowns.
Let me just say that I full disclosure, I was 100% for the lockdowns. I was 100% for the vaccines. I didn't start looking critically at this because I was afraid. I didn't start looking critically at any of it until I got injured by the jab. And then that opened my eyes to a lot of things because I saw how many people were lying to me about everything. I saw how people wouldn't even listen to me. That I was injured by. I'm like, you won't even fucking listen to me? Like, that's not how science works. I would go to doctor. Well, I just went to a doctor who completely dismissed me. And and it wasn't until I started talking to doctors that were running studies on treating people with COVID, actually trying to treat them, that I started to find out there's a bunch of bullshit happening around COVID, the vaccines, and suppression of early treatment. And it's a big con game being perpetrated by the criminals who just addicted half the country to heroin, right? And you think those guys aren't nefarious? Those aren't liars? Of course they are. And they have captured our government and they've captured our regulatory agencies. And to think that those people still don't have a critique from the left, but we do. So they're lying that our critique is conspiratorial instead of actually fact-based.
They just don't want anyone to have a critique. The role of the organized left has been to shut down any attempt to take a critical view of power and how it has completely gamed the pandemic to advance its own interests. I mean, they've just completely fallen down on the job. And so people aren't just silent, although a lot of my colleagues are self-censoring when they know something is deeply wrong. I get a lot of like behind the scenes handshakes and head nods and props, but it's time for people to speak up. But there are also people who have just been melting down all week over the fact that many people are waking up on the left. This isn't just some homogenous far-right resistance because the government is evil. And, many people went through the same experience as you. And so when I see these people who are just attacking people like you as anti-vaxxers, using this really loaded term, when you and I never said a goddamn thing about a vaccine before the government started to force everyone to take one that was clearly very flawed. When I see them do that, I think these, I look at them and I'm like, these are the people who were called anti-Semites for standing up
for Palestinians
at a time when it was unpopular to do so for the rights of Palestinians. These are the people that were called Assadists for standing up at a time when it was unpopular to do so against the dirty war on Syria. These are the people who were called Kremlin shills for standing up and speaking up at a time when it was unpopular to do so against the manufacturing of a new Cold War and a completely phony political hoax in our country. And these same people are using those same kind of techniques to shut down argument and to shut down debate and legitimate criticism of the oligarchy and elites. And I look at them and I think of abused children who grow up to be violent bullies and the kind of psychological satisfaction that bullies get as they expiate the abuse and trauma on people who remind them on people who are weaker than them. And they've sided with the establishment, and it must feel good for them to finally punch down on someone who's taking an unpopular stand. And that is so sad to witness.
Well, it's, just speaking the truth about what happened to you from a medical procedure is somehow controversial because people are so scared and so cult-like and tribal. And they can't even talk about medicine in a nonpartisan way. And that's the people on the that consider themselves on the left. Again, people who voted for Joe Biden are not lefties. Joe Biden is an extreme right-winger in any other country in the world. He's not a lefty. He's not a centrist. Joe Biden is an extreme right-winger and a racist, by the way, if you'd like to know. I know that term gets thrown around a lot by people who call themselves Democrats and voted for Joe Biden as if they were voting against racism, when, of course, Joe Biden has been the biggest enemy of black and brown people and working people in general in this country in power. I
saw Graham Elwood do that a few days ago on Twitter. Someone talking about being injured by the vaccine and him just mocking them. Just what like that is one of the saddest things to witness, is to see people getting mocked and attacked and ostracized because they have the temerity, they dare to say that they were injured by one of these vaccines. I mean, it's happened to some people. For most people, it hasn't happened. There's a professional mountain biker named Kyle Warner.
Yes.
Who's gone around the country, and I actually saw him at a press conference in Washington, who said that his career was ended because he got pericarditis. And he said the hardest thing of it was not having his career ended or the injury itself, but made to feel like he was nothing, that he had to shut up, and that he was a terrible person for going around and talking about it as though he were getting people killed.
Yes.
I mean, it's sad.
Yeah, I've had people say that to me. And by the way, I don't think there's, well, I don't want to talk about it, but it's disgusting to see to look what people did to Eric Clapton. Because now I'm 56 years old. I've known of Eric Clapton my whole life. And people, I'm not a big fan musically. It's, I'm not into that music. I'm not, I'm a bad guy to go to for music advice. But I've known of Eric Clapton my whole life, and everybody talked about what a god this guy was. What a good guitar. Never heard a bad thing said about Eric Clapton until he got injured by the jab, and he told the truth about it. And all of a sudden, he's the worst racist in the world. He's a Trumper. He's your enemy. He's a white supremacist. He's your enemy. And it was just like, oh my God. And then people repeated that propaganda that came directly from Big Pharma. And people would repeat that in joke forms. I can't think of anything worse you could do. And especially me. I have to live with this. Every fucking day of my life, I'm injured by the fucking vaccine. Every day of my life, I get a headache. Every day of my life, my neck hurts. I have joint pain. Every goddamn day of my life. And who knows what else? That's happening to me every fucking day of my life. And you don't have to live with that because you got lucky. You got lucky. I got unlucky, and now I have to live with this for who knows how long. I've been living with it since April 17th.
Yeah, this is the thing that I think is driving a lot of people into the streets or pushing people to speak up, is that early this year, the vaccine was sold to us as a panacea, as the way out of the pandemic. I remember seeing the cover of The Economist, and it had you looking through a dark tunnel to the light at the end of the tunnel. And at the end of the tunnel was a syringe. And the headline on The Economist was, "Finally, there is hope." And we were told, after being asked to show solidarity for one another, being told we were in this together, after banging pots and pans out our windows for the frontline workers, we were told the vaccine would be here, that it was a 2-dose miracle, or in the case of the Johnson & Johnson, a 1-dose miracle, and that it would all be over. And here we are, almost a year later since the rollout, and we are being swamped with fear porn and propaganda about Omicron, an entire swath of the population, millions and millions of people are being demonized as essentially inhuman disease vectors for refusing to take the vaccine. And all the young people who went out and did their part so that they could go to college and be a part of society and have a career at later on by getting those 2 doses is now being told that they have just joined the ranks of the evil unvaccinated if they don't get a 3rd dose. And the Pfizer CEO, Albert Bourla, who stands to make something like $93 billion in vaccine and booster profits this year alone, he said that he doesn't know when the boosters will end. And so everything we were told has been proven completely false. And at no point did St. Anthony Fauci or any of our public health officials who we were supposed to trust in as the embodiment of the science, at no point did they ever offer any ability for people to take off-patent early treatments. At no point did we have a discussion about the collapsing healthcare system and the need for Medicare for all. That didn't come from the top. At no point were we told that governors should stop cutting ICU beds. Instead, the population was divided down to families and friends, and communities are being shattered in front of our face, all because the rollout of the vaccine has failed to work. And instead of blaming those behind it, the government, big pharma, and seeking solutions in our own communities, those same forces have blamed individuals. They've blamed us for the failure. They've blamed the people. And that's why people are in the streets. That's why we're doing this discussion. That's why you're pissed off. That's why tens of thousands of people were protesting in London today, because they just can't take the lies anymore. They're now talking in London about going back into lockdown. People aren't going to take it the way they did before.
I hope not. I hope people push back, because the damage done from lockdowns is real. And it's massive. And
how can you trust these people? How can people on the left trust these people? I mean, they put us under de facto house arrest. They turned us into like human profit centers. And here we are back where we started again. And they're asking for us to trust them. And I see people, left-wing critics, media critics, these kinds of people trying to shut down discussion and restore trust in these very authorities, and tweeting out mainstream media articles about, 1 million deaths are coming soon unless we lock down and just shut down all over again. How can we trust these people?
I have no idea. I say to my stand-up act, I'm from a crowd of people who are always distrustful of big pharma. They're criminals. They got half the country hooked on heroin, and they've lied. They're the biggest, most fined criminal. It's a criminal culture in big pharma. Like, that's not hyperbole. That's for real. But they don't ever get prosecuted because they own the prosecutors. They own the government, right? And then so we're supposed to be completely suspicious of big pharma. We know government is captured by corporations, military-industrial complex, Wall Street, and nefarious interests, but when they come together, they're supposed to make beautiful babies. It's just the craziest thing. I've never seen anything like this.
Pharma,
and not you think you call yourself a lefty and you have not one fucking shred of critique for big pharma? Almost 2 years into this, you have not one shred of a fucking critique of any of this? You are the opposite of a lefty. You are a fucking go along conformist. You're a conformist. You prop up the big pharma. You are now propping up government. You are now squelching dissent.